In June, I thought the world was going to end. Bad news surrounding companies like Altria Group and poor performance from others like Chevron and Intel had my portfolio nosediving quicker than me into a margarita-filled pool. And in this month's portfolio update, we're going to talk all about it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright guys, now as I mentioned just a moment ago, my portfolio has not been doing great at all in the last 30 days. As you can see, it's currently valued at $35,909.29, which is nearly $2,000 less than this time last month. 30 days ago, I was at $37,608.87 with a 9.15% total unrealized gain. Compared to today, the unrealized gain is about 1.5%. So just in the last month, guys, we've lost, about 8% in this portfolio. Huge dip in unrealized gain. The silver lining here though, and you guys always hear me say this, but it's worth repeating, when the stocks come down in share price, it makes it cheaper to buy, makes it easier to buy that cash flow, that dividend income, which is really what we're after. And on that note, as you can see, my annual dividend income in this portfolio is sitting at $1,675.93, which is about $33 more than this time last month, which means that just in the last 30 days, guys, we're averaging a gain of about $1 per day in this portfolio, which I think is pretty quick. And having said that, guys, let's jump over to Seeking Alpha and get into some of my best and worst performing stocks for the month. Now, as you can see, the only two stocks in my portfolio that saw any sort of positive gain in the month of June were AbbVie and Main Street Capital Corporation. Everything else is in the red. And if we change this right here, we'll see the worst performing stocks at the top, with Altria Group coming in first with a loss of 23.26% just in the last 30 days. Huge drop. And this was the result of a couple bad pieces of news that came out surrounding Altria Group. We won't get into that into this video, especially considering I'm sure you already know about this. And my reaction to all this bad news, guys, was to just buy more. So I picked up a little more Altria Group in the month of June, which we'll see in just a moment. But for now, some of the other bad performers in my portfolio were Chevron, which was down almost 19% in the last month, Intel down over 16%, 3M down about 13.5%, Lowe's down 12.5%, EPD, Snap-on, ORCC, Southern Company, and others taking pretty substantial losses in the month of June. And before we get into my purchases and sales for the month of June, I want to show you my best and worst performing stocks overall, not just in the last 30-day period. So overall, Intel is my worst performer, down 27.6%. 3M, I'm down about 22.3%. XYLD and Starbucks and ORCC, I'm also down double digits. And then changing this to show my best performer, Chevron, no surprise, is still my best performer with a 56.6% gain. AbbVie up about 34.7%. Coca-Cola, Realty Income, Lockheed Martin, and Southern Company all doing fantastic, as well as a few of these others here. All right, now moving on and getting into my transactions for the month of June. Before we get into the purchases, guys, I actually did, and you might remember this if you've been watching my videos, I actually did sell out of one position. I sold out of AWR, American States Water Company. I removed that from my portfolio sometime towards the beginning of the month, I believe, and I had about 10.15 shares, or about $800 invested in this company. So I completely sold out of it and reinvested all of those funds into Lowe's and picked up just over 4 shares of Lowe's. And this really helped me build up my Lowe's position to where it is now, just over 10 shares. And in addition to this, I added even more to Lowe's. So moving on to my purchases for the month of June, you guys can see starting at the top with Intel, I invested $225 into Intel and picked up about 6 shares, which I think is a pretty big jump. Prior to this, I had about 35 shares of Intel. Now I'm sitting at just above 40. Moving on, I invested the same amount into Lowe's, $225, and picked up 1.23 shares of Lowe's. I invested $150 into Altria Group. I bought the dip and picked up 3.3 shares. I also invested another $150 into Starbucks, because you guys know me, I love my Starbucks. I gotta, buy a little bit here and there. And with that, I picked up 1.93 shares. And then last but not least, I invested $200 into my Roth IRA on M1 Finance, which is something I do every month. But anyway, guys, this brings my total purchases, my total contributions in my portfolio for the month of June to $950. Now, going back over to Seeking Alpha, guys, let's get into my watch list. And I actually made some pretty substantial changes to my watch list in the month of June. Instead of just having one big watch list where I house all the different stocks I'm looking at, which really isn't too many, I decided to split it into 2 different lists. We have my due diligence list here, which we'll start with, and then we also have my buy list, which I'll show you in just a moment. But starting with my due diligence list, these are the stocks I'm chewing on. I need to do more research into them before I make a conclusive decision whether or not not I want to add them to my portfolio. So all of those that I still want to look into and still need to do more research on are going to be housed in this due diligence list. And then going over to my buy list right here, these are the ones that I'm ready to buy. I'm ready to pull the trigger. I'm just waiting for the right price. But either way, I've made up my mind. I want to have these in my portfolio. Anyway, in addition to splitting up the watch list, I also made some changes into the stocks that I have in here and the ones that I removed. So going back over to the due diligence list real quick, I ended up removing a few stocks from my entire watch list. I removed AMT, American Tower Corporation, I removed Costco, and I removed Pepsi. I know, couple really, actually all three of those really great companies. So why did I end up removing them? Well, to be honest with you guys, in the case of AMT, I decided there's a couple other real estate investment trusts that I think I'd rather buy into before I get to AMT, and that's going to be SPG, Simon Property Group, and that's going to be Vici Properties. I would rather invest in those two companies before I buy any AMT, so I just decided, you know, for the sake of not wanting to diversify too much, let me just hone in on those two REITs for now. And then in the case of Costco and Pepsi, kind of the same thing. As far as Costco goes, you guys know it always trades at a premium. I don't know if that's going to come down anytime soon, and I'm a lot closer to buying into Target than I am Costco. And me personally, I don't feel like I need to own both Costco and Target. Both great companies, but I'd rather just put more money and more of my eggs into the Target basket. Does that make sense? Pepsi's kind of the same reason. I already have Coca-Cola. I'd rather just put more eggs into that basket. And having said that, I did add a couple more stocks to my watch list, to my due diligence list, my DD list. I added Abbott Laboratories right here, ticker symbol ABT. Someone recommended ABT to me in the comments of a YouTube video or on the Discord. I don't remember which, but when I looked into it, I really liked what I saw with the financials, and maybe I'll do a more in-depth video on that. And then Parker Hannifin, ticker symbol PH right here, is the same thing. I took a look at those financials. It looked really great, and I think this was a recommendation from Kevin Burgess. And it passed the initial sniff test, so I added it to the due diligence list, and we'll see what happens from here. But either way, I need to do some more research into it. And as far as what moves I plan to make this month in July, guys, there's a few things going on. Number one, I'm going to keep adding to some of those discounted positions in my portfolio. The ones like Altria Group, Intel, Lowe's, Starbucks, the ones that I can average down on, I'm going to continue buying those and just building out those positions. Secondly, guys, I plan to keep an eye on the two stocks on my buy list. That's going to be Apple, that's going to be Target. I'm just waiting for the right price, but when it gets there, I'm going to pull the trigger. And the third thing I need to do, guys, is I really need to get back to doing some stock research. I didn't do anything super in-depth in the month of June. I think the month of May was kind of a similar story. So it's been a couple months since I've, really done any sort of in-depth research on any companies, which I think is both good and bad. Number one, I think it's good just to stay in that routine of researching companies, just to get the practice and keep the rust off, and just to learn more and sharpen the skill set, because I still have so much to learn. But then again, on the other hand, being a long-term dividend investor, I don't really feel pressure to always be doing stock research, especially considering I feel like I have a really great batch of stocks in my portfolio right now. I'm really happy with where my portfolio's at. But most importantly, I want to continue sharpening that skill set, and I need to get those reps in researching companies. So that's something I'm going to get back to this month in July. And speaking of stock research, guys, check out this next video right over here to learn about a big mistake most investors make when researching dividend stocks. I was definitely guilty of this one myself when I first started investing, and you guys should learn from my mistakes. Like, really, somebody should learn from my mistakes. So click on this video right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.